Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I'm currently at the office of the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad. Thank you, YB, for taking the time to speak with us. It's actually quite a pleasure seeing you in your office, in the new environment. I mean, I can explore more ideas on your day job, but essentially why I'm here is because I want to talk a little bit more about your book, The Malaysian Sun, by yourself, that was written slightly before the general election. I've had a read through towards the end of the year. I actually brought this book in my sojourn journey, finding myself, so-called, during Christmas. And what I find interesting is that there's a lot of your life experiences that personally is very much like mine. We've known each other since 2006. We worked together at Allahyarham Tan Sri at PJ House, of course. But the paths that we took are a little bit different. I'm more of a critique, you're more of a doer. So I guess I get the fun job, you get the harder job, because I can, sit by the sidelines and tell you how bad you're doing at your job, right? But generally speaking, the background is actually quite the same. Progressives in Malaysia tend to find ourselves always on the losing side when it comes to the general election. It's not because there's a lack of us, but because there's not much of our seats being allotted across the country. Having said that, progressives are not Malaysia, not just Malaysia. We're a kaleidoscope of people. However, one wonders whether or not progressives would see the ability for us to affect policy change. To see you being appointed into such a high office, and a very critical one at that, does provide a glimmer of hope in terms of what we can bring about or affect change in the country and beyond. Do you feel that you have a lot of deliverables to offer and have to deliver when it comes to trying to impress folks like us from the same generation, from growing up in a place like PJ and going to MCKK and the likes? Where do you see yourself when it comes to representing progressives in the cabinet?
Wow, that's a very, very big question.
Harder than the climate change. Climate change juga ada soalan bocor.
Yeah. Well, I think it is challenging, but it's always an existential question for progressives everywhere. I mean, you go to the UK, you always see the Conservatives winning more often. Tony Blair was an exception. Otherwise, it was always short-lived. Then even in the US, I mean, maybe slightly more balanced, but they've had Donald Trump and whatnot. So I think that's not just something that people in Malaysia suffer. It's becoming more prevalent because of this issue of social media and all these things. So for me, I always think that it's not enough. I mean, obviously, we are all a creature of our circumstance. So for me, I'm a PJ boy, went to LaSalle PJ, multiracial upbringing, but then went to MCKK. Obviously, people see it as an elite school, albeit I had a whole mix of people from Kampong, Felda, and everywhere. Then going abroad. So, but at the same time, my parents are Kelantanese, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
So for me, it's always about trying to bridge all those things together.
Yeah.
It's not always easy. And it's always a journey. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember I was defending Tok Guru Nik Aziz's government against my friends who were pro-government, for example, and all those things. But the main issue is we cannot exist in isolation. I believe that put in the right way, maybe it's because I'm being an optimist, being a politician, but put in the right way, the concerns that we express, the stand that we take are of concern to many Malaysians, not just say those in the cities. Unfortunately, yes, I mean, like last election, for example, it was a good, we were driven just to the cities, even like places like in Penang, mainland Penang, even Kedah, which we used to do well, we were wiped out, and I think it's something for us to reflect on. But I always believe that it's a cycle, and now the Prime Minister has given me this responsibility of being in charge of Kelantan and Terengganu for the party, the most difficult job in the world. But I accept that challenge, right? But I know there's no shortcut to it. But we have to build that critical mass where a progressive alternative is seen as viable. And so I believe it is. Obviously, you know, this is also a unity government. It's not a Pakatan Harapan government. So we have people with different ideological persuasions. But I also think that this will be more common in the future.
Okay, that's the thing. Your experiences being elected, I think to some of us that might not be familiar, you have always been elected to government from the state seat just across the Federal Highway that you won in 2008, being elected the youngest elected representative at 26. Then you straight away made the political secretary to Allahyarham Tan Sri Khalid. And from then on, you went to Parliament, Setiawangsa, and flipped that seat. And surprisingly, at least to my end, you retained that seat in the previous election. So clearly, you're doing something that is good at the constituencies that you are at. However, these are urban seats. Racial demography aside, they are representative of industry, of youth, of productivity, and so on. But that represents just a small portion of the larger scope. Would this unity government bring about a signal that the progressives must, like it or not, extend a hand and try to see Malaysia as it is, a myriad and a plethora of a kaleidoscope of people, that to be able to work together across folks from various backgrounds and, as you pointed out, ideological persuasions, is not just critical but existential if you want to affect change in the future?
Okay, I mean, I think that's crucial, and the fact that we are working on this unity government, working on means that it's work in progress, because politics is so dynamic, and this it is people would say it's a strange bedfellows. So I think that's the most important lesson. For us to be able to understand that there's always different bubbles, different prejudices, different views, that we need to address, and it's easy to forget about this when you are in your circle.
Yeah.
So we like to think that, say, I mean, if I'm in the city, you think, oh, other people are ignorant, or they are beyond, you can't do anything with them, you have to give up on them because they won't change. But you look at politics, it's always been very dynamic. What is most important is to understand that, and to be able to reach out and to find solutions, and not to see it as a zero-sum game. I think that's one. But secondly, I think that we also must address is that there is a huge discrepancy between seats, urban seats and rural seats.
You mean delineation? Or?
Delineation. It's something that we need to look at, because I think that's another thing that we forget, is that if we do address that, the political picture will be slightly different.
What's the impetus right now? As I understand it, it's not due for the next one more term. Am I right?
Yeah, correct. But But what is important is that we have to accept that and then find ways to make it work. And for example, under a unity government, what would be good is that people will see that, if we come to an agreement with the main components of the unity government, it will be seen as basically cross-party.
Yeah.
Obviously, then there's the issue of the opposition. But I'm just saying that within, you have the PH, you have the BN, GPS. If we can agree, JRS, on this, then it will be a big progress on this. And then there's the issue of the 2/3 majority, which currently we do have. But yes, we need to find the right timing, as per the constitution and all that. But that is something that we need to address, because if we don't, then there's always that built-in bias against urban votes. And this, because it's always there's always a code word, right? When you say urban, it means non-Malays.
Yeah.
Rural means Malays.
Yeah.
That's why. So they say, in order to protect the Malays, we need to have more rural seats. But it's totally untrue, because what we have to remember is that now even Malays are majority city folk. We are living in the towns and cities as opposed to the kampungs. today, right? My area, is majority Malay, and it's mostly soldiers and people who live in PPR, and also middle upper class Malays in the Setiawangsa side, other than Chinese and Indians. So those seats are becoming more and more. So I think we need to address that head on, and to see that that's only a fairer representation will ensure that people will always have that faith in our democratic system, especially our always new cohort of Undi 18, because they have a very simple. I'm sure the way they understand is how come this party got this number of votes, but it did not end up with this number of seats.
Yeah.
And
But we all know the reason why.
we do. But if you're young and all that's a cause for
Actually,
disenchantment.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that disenchantment, disenfranchised notion is actually quite critical. I'll touch on the youth story a bit later. There's Generation Z, Generation Alpha that are both interested, or might not be interested in politics, and also very much in tune to climate change. Do you feel that that is another one of those unnecessary burdens that you think about at night, that you have to reach out to this cohort and try to impress upon them that the government is doing a lot when it comes to climate change, that they are needed and crucial in policy development and the likes? What's the kind of outreach that you have in store to reach out to the younger audience and younger voters right now?
Yeah,
And TikTok doesn't cut it. That's one of the platforms. Yeah.
When it is, the young generation now is so dynamic. The way things change and all that. So my difference and them, if you look at the youngest voter is about 20 over years, right? 23 years, but that it feels that it's much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that. One of the most important things, because I know that this is actually very high up in their concerns when you talk about environment, about climate change, as opposed to perhaps people of my generation. Okay.
And politics, based on the recent study that I've
politics,
seen.
yeah.
Strangely enough, yeah.
So I think that's why I think it's important to show them that whatever they do when they vote, when they turn out, it can make a difference, because that's crucial. There's no issue that they're concerned about climate change, but I think to convince them that getting out to vote matters, I think that is something that we need to work on. And we just, it's our task as policymakers to be creative, to reach out. There was a time when I didn't want to be on TikTok, and do all those.
But you're forced, honestly.
I'm forced to, right? Because they are
They're there.
They're there, yeah. And so I think that's where and they are not just passionate. When I see them, I meet them, I talk to them. They're not just passionate, but they are very well informed. So someone like my generation or older, we can't take a condescending approach to this generation.
They're very opinionated.
They're very opinionated.
We raised them as such.
Yeah.
And when we get talked back, we kind of be perplexed. Why are you talking back? But
yeah.
we brought them up.
If we did that.
No, that game over. Yeah. Now so you get.
They feel that that's part and parcel of what they do. So I think we need to understand that. And for obvious reasons that for them, if we say we don't achieve our targets, which is within this next decade or less, then by 2050, when they have their families and whatnot, then this planet will be in the midst of a terrible climate change circumstance. We are already heading there, right? So I think for them, and there's that sense of it's our generation that's not doing enough, or because of the
legacy
sins of their father.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think that is something that we need to address, and I try my best to engage with them, because like I said, there's a lot of passion, interest, knowledge there, energy there, and I think it's also for me then to convey it to people of my generation or older that we just have to do it faster. It's lip service is not enough.
Two more areas before we conclude this conversation. Second last area is Sabah and Sarawak. I feel that your ministry is actually quite crucial in terms of trying to get the job done there. But of course, it's also important for you to continue to espouse the Prime Minister's vision on bringing them closer to the fold. We've seen a lot of moves to give them the concessions that is needed, overdue, I suppose. And I see that our Borneo government counterparts are seeing a lot of goodwill coming in from the federal government, from Putrajaya. Do you feel that your ministry is one of those that are, in your own words, a beachhead ministry to enter that whole environment of bringing Sabah and Sarawak closer to the fold of federal government?
Definitely. I mean, one of the things, one of the first things we did after the formation of the government, now we are going to, what do you call that, the regulation of energy will be handed to Sabah. Sarawak is already there. I think it's never been federalized, but it was taken away from Sabah, both energy operations as well as regulation. So now we are going to give by 1st January 2024, regulation will be with Sabah, and there will be, we are working out on the operation side on SESB to supply electricity, and how Sabah will be taking over that. So that's that. Then some land policy issues and whatnot. We are also working with comfortably, I think, with the two state governments of Sabah and Sarawak. But most importantly is for us is, we look at, one is that we see like Sarawak, for example, they have done very well in showcasing themselves as where there is sustainable green energy. They're talking about even green hydrogen.
Yeah, actually.
And they're attracting
I've had a guess on that.
Yeah, and they're attracting interest from across the world.
Yeah.
Including, how they manage their forests and whatnot. Which I think has a lot of good lessons to offer to the federal government for how we do things at peninsular level. Even Sabah, I think, because how they've been able to showcase what they're doing at the state, and because I think the natural heritage is so crucial to their tourism industry. So I think, again, these are things that we can learn from. So at the same time, when I meet them and whatnot, and we've had positive meetings, is that we say that at the end of the day, when we go to the international level, we need to work together, because at the federal level we represent Malaysia as a whole, right? But obviously they have much more powers than, say, the states in the peninsula in these matters, and we try to see where we can learn from one another and build on that strength. So rather than see as a problem, I see that bigger autonomy that they have is actually a source of strength that we can draw lessons from.
The final area of exploration with you today is on the idea of financing for climate change. Recently, I spoke with one of the luminaries of corporate Malaysia, Tan Sri Andrew Sheng. He is a proponent of trying to bring about greater ability for us to finance for climate change and ecology survivability. He's mooting various ideas, including a carbon exchange, stock exchange, green peer-to-peer financing, basically anything under the sun to get the job done. He likened it to Islamic financing, on how because of us having the Islamic Finance Act back in 1980-something, 84, or 83 if I'm not mistaken. Then a decade later we saw a boom in Islamic financing. It still carries on until today. Where do you feel the financing aspect of things are when it comes to climate change and carbon exchange? Do you feel that these kind of ideas are critical for us to explore right now? And what are the things that you've done at the ministerial level to ensure that financing is being facilitated better?
It is crucial, because I think like a lot of things, it all boils down to money. Obviously, political will and all that, but the finance aspect is very crucial. So, for example, Bursa Malaysia, they started a voluntary carbon exchange, and They had their first auction this year. So that's a step in the right direction. But we haven't, both projects that were auctioned were unfortunately not Malaysian projects. So I think we are looking at how we can put Malaysian projects on the exchange, because then we have a lot of our GLCs, our corporates who are interested to fund it because of their SDG objectives, you know, so they were looking for Malaysian projects. So that's what they were asking me. So I think that's something we're working on. But in terms of carbon trading and all that, one aspect of it is that because we're trying to find how to make it work within the Paris Agreement, it definitely allows for it, but we want to protect our nationally determined contributions, NDCs, under the Paris Agreement. So those are the things that is still being worked out. And secondly, the Ministry of Finance is also looking at how to have or the viability of a carbon tax. Singapore has a carbon tax, you know, because only if you price carbon in, then just like
then it becomes
our energy, right?
Yeah.
Then people will start to respond accordingly.
Treat
right?
carbon as a resource and a cost.
Yes. So those things are being explored, and even the issue of carbon credits and whatnot. You know, we are still looking at how best to manage it. Definitely, you know, we have huge carbon sink in Malaysia, the forests. We saw, I mean, several state governments have been in touch with various agencies to do this carbon trading thing. But at the and we do accept that carbon is a state matter because it's related to land and forests and whatnot. But you know, for us, again, when we talk at the federal government, we have to regulate at if there's trading abroad and or getting carbon in and all that. At the international level, the federal government has to play a role. So that's the framework that we are working on, and hopefully we can get that sorted soon, because that market is a big one to capitalize on.
This book is, of course, a testament in terms of the kind of work that you're doing. It's not easy being, I guess, a minority in terms of being a progressive in this very conservative country. Do you feel that there's a lot that needs to be done when it comes to your own personal mission? You've settled in, I assume that you're settled down in your role right now, about 5 months into the job now. But are you comfortable in your own skin, being a minister, being one of the minority progressive voices, being an urbanite, and now you have to work hand in hand with the various colleagues that you have in your unity government and the myriad of people here? Is it all there is to this story, or is there more to it?
Well, when I had to choose two offices because it's a merger of two ministries. When I was appointed as minister, it's this the former CASA office or the former KETSA office, which is next to the Palace of Justice. One of the things that really compelled me to take the KETSA office was the fact that it was next to Palace of Justice, where I was, I would be detained, where I was hounded up and down by the government, Because for me, at the end of the day, I mean, and it's a self-reminder. I've seen it happen to other people as well. It's easy for us to forget it's easy to be an activist.
But it's easy.
Yeah.
People think it's hard. It's actually easy.
It's easy.
It's easier to be where you are now, policymaker. That's
correct.
The harder part.
And it's easy to, in a way, it's easy to be in a lockup. Granted, I was there for 3 days and 2 nights, not like our Prime Minister, right? But having said that, when you're in a position of power, you tend to forget all those things. You tend to forget your mission, your whatever brought you into politics. Like everyone has an origin story. So you tend to forget that when you're in a lush environment with the bodyguards and the drivers and all those things, right? When people stand up when you enter the room. So I think I mentioned that in the book as well.
Yeah.
But obviously that written before I became a minister.
Yeah.
Is I have to remind myself to never lose that. And I think I can't say that I've achieved anything by being here, because but Nik Nazmi being minister, okay, you tick a box for your personal CV.
Yeah, but that's
that's that, right? I mean, there'll be tons of ministers before and after me.
Yeah, correct.
But it's about when I retire, I want to look back at what I have actually achieved. And I think I haven't done enough of that, definitely. and by putting the mindset, putting the hat of an activist, of what change I can do and what not, but having the power of someone in government. Obviously, navigating the realities of power and politics, which is another thing. But that, I think, is important. Having that desire to change, to reform. Then you meet certain barriers, and navigating that. But keeping that spirit alive is crucial to be able for me to be able to be true to myself.
So sometimes, when you were an activist for the longest of time, you wanted to be in power. You and your compatriots wanted to be in power so that you can affect change. Do you have to pinch yourself every now and then and see, okay, now all this time I've been fighting on the sidelines. Okay, I got the thing that I was fighting for. Now what? Is that reality sinking in, or has sunk in, or you're like, okay, I've done that bit, now I need to work forward?
It has sunk in. I mean, in the sense that now I there was always an excuse. Like you said, I was pretty much always in government since I got elected 2008. I was in state government, then 2018 I was at federal government.
Essentially, you were only opposition for about 30 months. That's about it.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and but we always had an excuse. When I was in state government, the federal government was a different party.
Yeah.
When we won in 2018,
it's a convenient.
It was convenient. In 2018, the prime minister was not our party leader, right? And he thinks differently. So now, you have the prime minister. I'm in office and all that. So I think that for now, I know that I'm being given all this huge responsibility. And I can't have an excuse not to deliver.
Okay. So you're worried right now for your own,
Well,
I'm not talking about political survival. No, that's not it. I'm talking about the legacy that you want to leave behind. Are you now worried for that?
In the sense, not so much that thinking every day, what sort of legacy, but sort of, whether, when I have a 12-year-old son. Whenever he sees, land being cleared, trees being felled, he'll send a photo to me. And so, Abba, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is...
Okay, it sounds like an angry, what do you call that, a constituent.
Yes. So what I want to do is to be able to, go back and tell my son, that I've done certain things that I can leave behind for him. Yeah, legacy in a way, but something not so much personal, but the change that I can effect. Whether people care who does it or recognize who does it, that's secondary to me. But as far as I know that within my power, within my influence, I was able to do certain things and make that change happen. I think that's something that I want to achieve.
So once more, check out The Malaysian Sun. It's on the big bookstores. It's currently shortlisted as the Popular Book Fest Critic Award. I'm definitely butchering that, but do check it out. It's a great book. I've read it just before. The funny part, and this is for our viewers, was that I was already scheduled to interview you the day before you were appointed as minister. So, the day that you were appointed as minister, I texted you and I said, I texted the minister and said, I don't think you're coming for the studio interview today. That was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. And of course, if you want to learn more, head off to their website as well. Of course, you can find other resources at astrology.com. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.